Now, yesterday's meeting of European anti-Islamist groups in Aarhus, organised by the English Defence League, was judged a damp squib in the papers this morning. But the thousands who staged a counter-demonstration think we should not underestimate them. They say Europe needs to learn from the horrendous killing spree by Norwegian right-winger Anders Behring Breivik, whose trial begins in 2 weeks. Is Britain too complacent about the far right? Tommy Robinson, the leader of the EDL, is here. And on a previous rally, this was at Tower Hamlets, you said, I just want to see exactly where you're coming from here. You said, every single Muslim watching this, on 7/7, you got away with killing and maiming British citizens. You got away with it. You had better understand that we have built a network from one end of this country to the other end, and we will not tolerate it. And the Islamic community will feel the full force of the English Defence League if we see any of our citizens killed, maimed or hurt on British soil again.
Yep. Basically, that we will highlight it, as we've done from day one, peacefully protesting, bring it to the media attention and put pressure on the Islamic community to deal with the Islamists within
With respect, that doesn't sound peaceful, that sounds very threatening.
Well, it wasn't. It was peaceful. It is peaceful, and it's not a threat. It's a promise. We will continue to do what we're doing. The Islamic community have got Islamist organisations, and every one of them, they're not dealing with them. We now have more Islamic extremists in Britain than we've ever had, and it's spreading like a wildfire.
What would you mean by full force?
By full force, taken to the streets in as many numbers as we can.
What do you mean by every single Muslim watching this?
I mean every single Muslim. It is your duty to deal with the extremists within your community. Stop brushing it under the carpet, pretending it's not there.
Now, people say you're just a bunch of thugs. You came out the football thug culture. When you headbutted a fellow EDL member, Alan McKee, what was all that about? Well,
about was he had it was Combat 18. I stood up on stage.
Right.
We had a breaking point in our movement where we had neo-Nazis trying to attach themselves to what we stand for. So I took the opportunity to stand on stage, call them out, name them. When I got off stage, I was confronted by people wearing Combat 18 t-shirts. At which point I headbutted him, because he was Sikh hiling and shouting abuse. And then when I got back to the coach, I was confronted by another 30 Nazis. I get many death threats on a weekly basis by Nazis. We've done more to confront Nazism and Islamism.
So are you an anti-Nazi movement?
I am. Yeah, we are. Yeah. And Islamism and Nazism are opposite sides of the same coin. They're identical. They're both fascist ideologies. But Nazism's been defeated. Islamism hasn't.
Well, it's interesting because Nick Griffin from the BNP described you and your organisation as good-hearted morons.
Nick Griffin, yeah, that's coming from Nick Griffin, yeah?
Well, he likes what you do. He says, and I'll go on with the quote, he said it in February 2011, they're trying to do something, he says of you, and the good thing is they've politicised a whole generation of youngsters. And you used to be in the BNP, didn't you?
Yeah, in 2004. When you drown in, you clutch at straws. We looked around. Before I joined the BNP, I didn't know non-white people couldn't join. I was a member for 12 months on the elite list. If you check the elite list, I didn't renew my membership in 2004, in 2005. And from him...
You thought the BNP was a multiracial organisation?
Well, I didn't know that non-white people couldn't join it. I didn't know Nick Griffin used to be leader of National Front. I didn't know he was a Nazi. And for him saying we're morons, I watched him on Question Time. So
good-hearted morons?
Yeah, well, I watched him on Question Time, so we'll know who the good-hearted moron is.
Well, Ansar, how dangerous do you believe the EDL are?
I think Stephen or Tommy or whatever is, and his organisation are extremely dangerous. I think they peddle hate, they peddle misconceptions, they peddle myths at a time when we've seen spikes in Islamophobia, race hate. We see attacks across the United Kingdom.
Have you been threatened?
I've been threatened many times on Twitter. We have live cases. I've been threatened with violence against myself. But this isn't about me. This is about a broader issue, which is, as a society, we have your organisation, Tommy, Stephen, which is peddling hate, which is hurting, alienating. You are denigrating a whole community. Over and over again, it's been made very, very clear by the leadership within your organisation. This is about all Muslims. This is about Islam, not Islamism, and I'm sure you can even define Islamism.
I've grown up in Luton. Some of the best people I've met through growing up are Muslim. Some of my mates are Muslim. You had Butch Vassell on this show last week. I was out with his son on Thursday night, okay? I don't hate all Muslims. Muslims are the first victims of Islam and extremist Islam. That's what's happening. I don't hate Muslims at all. And I've said that from day one. When it comes to peddling hate, you just said you've been threatened on Twitter. Okay, well, I've had an armed guard for my family for a week. I've had threats to decapitate my children's head. I've been in hospital with bruising on the brain. I've had 8 stitches in my lip. I get confronted and attacked on a weekly basis. So I don't need anyone to tell me about being threatened and where it comes to from being threatened.
My answer.
Do you not think for a second that you are part of an organisation, and your organisation, you were in Denmark yesterday,
yes,
and you are bedfellows with people who are saying that we want to outlaw the Quran, we want to outlaw the hijab, we want to deport Muslims from Europe, we want to exclude them, we want to pay them to have governments send them out of Europe. You are trying to become now a soft face which is appeasing hatred against Muslims and Islamophobia.
Let me ask you something. The people that share, to a greater or lesser extent, some of the concerns that Tommy attempts to articulate, do they not count?
Yeah. I think the concerns are important, and I think we have a major problem in this country, which is there has been no proper debate about what is the nature of Islam. Islam, as far as my understanding is concerned, and almost every Muslim I've met, Islam is inclusive, it supports women's rights, it gave women's...
Wahhabi sects of Islam? Wahhabism?
I have no idea what that...
Extremist sects, Saudi-funded sects. They're peaceful.
This is the United Kingdom. Yeah. This is the United Kingdom. Yeah. We're talking about Muslims and Islam in the United Kingdom. We are inclusive. Working. Hold on a second. We are inclusive. We're tolerant and supportive and encouraging of other faiths. In Islam, it says La ikra'a fi din. That means there's no compulsion in religion. So Islam is not about oppression. It's actually about providing freedom for people and freedom from fear. Fear, the kind of fear that your organisation peddles.
Fear that Islam peddles towards us in many ways. And you're saying this. There'll be thousands of people, millions of people sitting at home from working class backgrounds who live in towns like Luton Town who don't see it integrating, who don't see it as being peaceful, who see hostility. My children...
Sorry, who don't see what as integrating?
Islam. It's not integrating society.
So this is an Islamic problem, not an Islamist problem.
No,
so you're not talking... No, you are not talking about political extremism. You are talking about Muslims generally, and you've said it now again.
I'm talking about Islam. I'm not talking about Muslims. I'm talking about Islam is failing to integrate. If you look across Europe...
But there are millions... Can I just say, there are millions of people who perfectly well integrate. You think all Muslims, do you not, are like Anjem Choudhury and that mob?
How can you just say that? I've just told you.
It's the same as somebody assuming that all white people are like you.
How can you just tell me? How can you just tell me that I think all Muslims are like Anjem Choudhury when I've just said some of the best people through growing up I've met a Muslim. Some of my best mates through growing up were Muslim. Yeah, Islam. Islam is in a 7th century ideology. It's not just me that thinks it's failing. Every single... The fastest...
Well, hang on, let him finish.
The fastest growing political parties in every single country in Europe are anti-Islamist political parties. Whether you like it or not, it's happening. People are fed up with what's going on. Islam needs to evolve, it needs to modernise, and it's not... You can't call me a racist or fascist for picking out problems within the Islamic ideology.
Matt Goodwin, how significant are the EDL? Are they, in a way, changing the discourse in this country?
Well, they are a significant movement and they're representing concerns and grievances that are in society. I think on the other hand, probably lots of people who are watching the show may feel concerned about the way in which organisations like the English Defence League tend to have a lot of slippage in the way that they talk about Islam. So an organisation that started talking about militant Islamism now openly talks about Muslims in general. So let's just
talk about Islam.
Well, okay, but let's just be absolutely clear.
We have to be very precise in our terminology.
Let's be absolutely
it's a sensitive issue.
Let's be absolutely clear. When we look at the survey evidence and we look at all of the research that's been done, the vast majority of Muslims in this country do not endorse terrorism or suicide bombing. The vast majority of Muslims in this country feel strongly attached to their country and their neighbourhood. Okay, the vast majority of Muslims in this country do not endorse things like honour killings that you're organising.
Law.
This is okay. So here's the problem.
Under Sharia law, Muslim women are treated second-rate citizens. Here's 50% less of a man.
Well, I'm a Muslim woman. I'm not a second-rate citizen.
No, but you'll get 50% less than that of a man in a Sharia law court. Well, that's not on in British. Women have fought for decades for equal rights in Britain. Muslim women.
I'll tell you what I find really interesting about...
Tommy.
Wait a minute, Shaista.
What I find really interesting about your organisation is I was looking at your website yesterday, and you're trying to say that you're a human rights organisation. I mean, I find that quite farcical. Basically, your organisation does peddle hate, you peddle misinformation. Last month, in March, 2 Asian men were beaten to a pulp by 4 men from Yorkshire who claim they sympathise with the EDL. They have actually gone to prison.
Where's the evidence?
Well, this is what they said. It actually was discussed in court. They've gone to prison. Okay. Now, 2 weeks ago in Salford, not that far from here, a black woman was walking in broad daylight, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She's pushing her child in a pram. A man racially abused her, used sexual language and threw acid at her.
Well,
now, racism is very much a reality of people's lives.
But Shaista, the other side of this is that, I suppose the question some people ask is, do the Muslim community need to do more to separate themselves from their extremist wings, Muslim communities? From their extremist wings, there are young men who want to kill their fellow Britons. There are those poppy burners. Now, what do you think of all those people?
I think they're extremists. I think they're an absolute disgrace, just like I think you're an extremist.
Okay. Well,
simple as that.
You talk about human rights. The European Court of Human Rights done an in-depth study in 2004, and they found that Sharia law is incompatible with Western freedoms and democracies due to their views on homosexuals, their views on women, and their views on infidels. That's all the non-Muslims over here.
But if you're a defender of liberal values, as you seem to be portraying yourself, why in a recent Channel 4 documentary did you throw items at the police and abuse an Asian security guard about Norway, and you were impersonating Anders Breivik?
No, you see,
why do your members wear toy, is this true, toy pig masks and carry bacon? It's liberal values, it's hardly Shirley Williams,
I'm glad you pointed that out. When I had my hood up and I had goggles on, this is what we're up against as an organisation. I said ribbit because I looked like a frog, because I had goggles on and I was drunk. I didn't say Breivik, they put a subtitle as Breivik. I didn't say Breivik, I said ribbit. So, and taken out of context, a lot of those things, if you know what the story behind what had happened, it's not the way it looked.
What are these pig masks all about?
I don't know, I don't wear a pig mask. I don't wear a pig mask.
The point is more important than this, and I'll tell you why, Stephen, because firstly, within society, and one thing you're not recognising, you're worried about the Islamisation of this country.
Not just I'm worried.
No, it's okay. It's all right. Look, you're worried about the Islamisation of this country. You're worried about the Islamisation of Europe because of fear. Fear that doesn't need to exist. If you understood the Islamic contribution to this society, arts, science, maths, history, music, literature, hold on a second, the Renaissance.
Look at all these Islamic countries where Christians are being persecuted and massacred.
You cannot judge
on 44 other countries.
You cannot judge, Stephen, you cannot judge a religion by the misguided actions of a few individuals.
It's not a few individuals, it's 44 countries. It's 44 countries, and we're here talking about the far right. Can someone define far right to me, please?
The old politics.
Can you define far right?
Matt's one of the experts on that very thing.
Right, there are two key things that far right groups share. Okay, firstly, they reject or they undermine what representative liberal democracy is all about. Now, a liberal representative democracy accepts that a plurality of views is legitimate. We should support those views. We should allow those views. Okay, and I think what many people would feel is that your organisation and the way in which you campaign is automatically discounting the views of Muslims and the rights of Muslims to hold those views. But secondly, what far-right groups share, I mean, I'm sure you would say you're not the same organisation as, say, I don't know, the American Nazi Party, right? Because there's a lot of variation within those parties. Hold on. But what they also share, ultimately, is a rejection of human equality. And I would guess that many people who are watching the show would feel that your organisation is no longer talking about militant Islam. You're just talking about Muslims.
Okay. Well, you'd say
I'd bring Jamie and Abha in a second.
You'd say far right. I say we've got a Sikh division.
I don't have the BNP.
A Jewish division, a Hindu division, and excuse me, sorry. And Matthew's an expert on the far right. Yeah. Matthew, you're from Kettering. 98% Christian. You was brought up in Kettering.
No, I wasn't.
Where was you brought up?
Chiswell Green.
Chiswell Green. Well, what's the population of Muslims there? It's non-existent.
I live in Manchester. I'm more than familiar with
what I'm saying is, where you've been brought up, there's been no Muslims, there's been no immigration. Where I've been brought up, when your children go to a school where other children at that school's fathers are teaching them hatred due to their Islamic extremist views, then you can be an expert. Because all these experts which are doing all these studies and reading all these books, they're out of touch with reality.
Jamie Bartlett, are you out of touch? Are too many politicians out of touch with what he perceives as his reality? Tommy Robinson.
I think so. I mean, I think clearly one of the reasons groups like the English Defence League and all across Europe, various forms of far-right parties are growing is partly a feeling that especially left-wing parties that should have been representing the working class no longer really understand what it's like to live actually in a multicultural society. I mean, Tommy can say, you know, I live in Luton, I know what it's actually like, you're from Westminster, you've actually got no idea. But the question here is about whether we're complacent. You know, for all the bluster that Tommy and the EDL can present each week, and they get lots of media coverage, there's not actually many of them. Most of them are online on Facebook and on forums and all the rest of it. They can't really get more than 400 or 500 people out in the streets. Look at the BNP in the UK. Polls, what, 1%, 2%? And look what happens across the rest of Europe. In France, the Front National are polling at 20%.
This is really key, isn't it? There's no, Matt, there never really has been. Mosley in the 30s had a sort of brief shining moment, if you want to call it that, but nothing much beyond that. There's been no tradition of electoral success in this country for far-right parties, hasn't
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of that has to do with the system that we have. I mean, we are just as concerned as our European neighbours about the core far-right issues, and I don't think those issues should be dismissed or discounted. I think those issues need to be talked about, and that is probably the only point of convergence that you and I would have. But I would also say, in Britain particularly, because of the failure of parties like the BNP and before the BNP, the National Front, we've tended to be extra dismissive about the far right. We've dismissed supporters of the far right as a lunatic fringe who don't deserve to have their grievances talked about, and I don't necessarily think that's
because we're not far right that we've been successful. It's because people don't want to vote for the BNP and groups like that, because the average person that's joined the English Defence League is an average man.
There's quite a lot of crossover between the two, isn't there? Between the BNP and the EDL, there's quite a lot of crossover.
Well, I mean, the reality of the situation is the type of narratives that these parties are offering around Islam and around immigration are very similar. Jamie's study has shown that EDL supporters are not just concerned about Islam, they're concerned about immigration more generally.
I think a lot of people are concerned about immigration more generally.
Abha, do you want to come in here? And then the guy in a second.
I've a huge problem with the way the debate's been defined at the moment, because the implication seems to be that there needs to be some sort of proactive steps taken by government to stop people from expressing their opinions. This is effectively what we're talking about. You can't say this because I don't agree with you, and every opportunity that the EDL is taking to express themselves, the reaction is so strong to this. Well, actually, what we should be asking is, why does the EDL exist in the first place? I mean, why is it that these people feel so disenfranchised that they have to look to the EDL rather than their local Labour councillors or Liberal Democrat councillors or whatever party? There is a deficit here in terms of representing what these people's views are. Whether or not you agree with them or not, we live in a democracy. The idea is that people are able to express their opinions, whatever they may be.
Precisely, that's fair enough. And as we said earlier on, there are people who have these concerns to a greater or lesser extent.
These concerns that we've thrown our lives into, remember, we're all volunteers. The English Defence League, we don't get paid for anything.
There are legitimate issues, and they need to be discussed.
What are those legitimate issues in your mind?
There are, of course, there's legitimate issues on race, on immigration, on all those issues. The point is, across Europe, these issues are being manipulated by mainstream parties. They are being manipulated. There's definitely an increase in far-right activity.
When you say far-right,
across Europe, and this is very, very dangerous.
Finish. I'll come back to you in a second.
This is very dangerous. Of course, there needs to be a legitimate debate in this country. It needs to be an accurate debate. Let's talk accurately. Let's not stoke up hatred. Let's not use misinformation. That's
what would you like? What would you like? This is a really important question. What would you like the Muslim communities in this country, and they come in as many different forms, what would you like them to do?
Integrate and assimilate. That's all we want. Integrate and assimilate.
And what does that mean for you? Can you define
and when you say you can't call everyone who opposes anything to do with Islam far right, it's not right. You can't.
What do you mean by integrate and assimilate? How would that manifest? How would that look?
Well, what I'd say is, my mum was an Irish immigrant to this country. Yeah. Well, if you go to Luton, half my best mates are West Indians. How come the Jews, the Sikhs, the Hindus, the West Indians, everybody is integrated? There's no problem. There's no commotion. You just spoke about 2 racist incidents last week. 38 girls on Friday in court in Oxford. 12 Muslim men and 38 children aged 11 to 14 are being abused and raped.
Sexual perverts come in all races.
But not in the same organisation.
Let's be audience in a minute.
When are Muslims going to take to the streets in outrage against their fellow Muslims for what they're doing?
Let's be clear about 2 or 3 issues.
Audiences in a minute.
The first issue is this. If there are criminals, they are criminals, and their religion and their race and their ethnicity has got nothing to do with it. That is the first. No, hold on. You've had a fair shout. Secondly, within Islam, we have women's rights, we have men's rights, and we have rights for children. We are very moral, and we are quite conservative on these issues, okay? Now, your idea of assimilation, I assume would mean that I shouldn't have a beard, wear a hat, or walk around in this robe. Is that right?
No, it's not. And the same with the hijab. No one, there's no problem. You had a debate on here the other day where you're talking about the burqa. Why should the burqa be banned? No one said what needed to be said. In my hometown, there's been 4 armed robberies by people wearing burqas. That's enough of a reason to ban.
What would you like Mo, for example, or Shaista, for example, to do differently from what they're doing at the moment? In what way would you like them to live their lives differently?
Mo works with the Muslim Council of Britain, don't you?
I work with a number of different
affiliated
organisations
to the Islamic Forum of Europe. All these organisations that you work with, you're affiliated with, either drabble off money to charities that fund extremism or Islamist organisations.
That is a slander, and there's no evidence about that.
So you're not affiliated on page 22 of the Muslim Council of Britain with the Islamic Forum of Europe, who are named as an Islamist organisation.
Tommy, the fact of the matter is that the government, this issue is about complacency with your organisation. Now, we can argue about what the definition of far-right and Nazism is,
the fact is we're not far-right.
We have scholars and studies today saying that the rhetoric and the language used by your organisation is in parallel with the anti-Semitism that came in the 1930s before the Holocaust.
Tommy, listen, you'll have another chance. Well, I know you weren't pointing about, there was lots of pro-Israeli flags at the demo yesterday, which itself is an interesting phenomenon. This is an interesting development in the right. But
I think the debate's quite characteristic of all of this. You know, I don't think that the English Defence League is actually that big, and I don't think it's going to get hugely bigger. It does represent a lot of grievances that people have, of course, and actually just the idea of getting out on the streets and actually doing something is quite appealing. But the fact is that the way that the media landscape has changed so much in the last 5 or 10 years has meant that Tommy's always reading stories about Sharia law about to be introduced into Luton or anywhere else, and other people are reading stories about the English Defence League, and it becomes very, very polarised very, very quickly. So because the English Defence League is predominantly an online organisation, they send each other links of stories and essentially whip themselves up constantly.
They get groupthink.
Groupthink, and sort of based on some misinformation.
Well, there's many of us that are guilty of groupthink. Let's, Guy, let's get a microphone over. Good morning.
I think it's very unfortunate that the far right seem to be getting all the press when it comes to criticism of Islam. I think there's a lot that needs to be criticised in a free democracy about Islam. Generally, but of course Islamists in particular. And the main problems that I see are that embedded in Islamic theology and culture is the idea of jihad. And it's been going on for 1,500 years.
With something we've debated on many occasions.
And quite
Our
rightly.
question this morning, are we too complacent?
I think we're too complacent.
The far right.
I think we're too complacent about the far right of Islamism. That is where I think we're complacent.
Okay, gentleman over there. Hello. Yeah.
I think politicians spark the fires. So Jack Straw, many of the politicians, mainstream politicians, they discuss issues like grooming, extremism, and these buzzwords. And you find that organisations like English Defence League just rally upon those particular ideas. There are definitely issues, but the fact is the way they're discussed by mainstream politicians, so the discussion about are we too complacent in tolerating English Defence League, the fact is the public space has already been given to these organisations, and the rhetoric spurred by politicians gives these movements fire and gives them credibility for their arguments.
Mo, I just wonder what you think about this, and I'll come to you guys in a minute, and John Mann as well, the MP. Is it good to have Mr Robinson on this morning so that we can examine and analyse and assess what he's saying? Do you support that? Because you wanted to ban them at one stage, didn't you?
Tommy, if you and your family ever want to come to meet my family for dinner, you are more than welcome.
And you're more...
And let me just finish.
I have no hatred.
Is it right that they appear on the media and stuff like that?
Right now, while we're sat here, most of us can hear outside the protests going on. I think it's important.
Protesters who attacked another lady, they attacked a lady, another lady. That she got spat on by these.
It was 8 people.
Hold on.
It's 8 people.
Winston Churchill said the future fascists
Winston Churchill was a famous Islamophobe, actually. Okay.
Winston Churchill was what? That's famous. You've sorted out next week's debate for us. Thank you very much indeed for that.
I think it's important. I think that's important that you're here. I think it's important we have a debate. I think it's important we have a discourse and challenge these things on the intellectual battlefield. What I do have a problem with is if the government decides that organisations who are not conducive to the public good, whether it albeit Al-Muhajirun or Muslims Against Crusades, if the government decides to ban them, and actually I've got a bit of paper here which is a copy of a letter I wrote to the Home Secretary where I wrote her and James Brokenshire wrote back to me, and he said that they decided that they were not going to prescribe the English Defence League. Okay,
well, there's no reason despite the fact, despite the fact, any terrorism. 1 in 5 members of Anders Breivik are in jail for terrorism.
Anders Breivik made it very clear that he has influence and has links with, clear links with the English Defence League.
Okay, I've got to answer that. On page 1438 of Anders Breivik's manifesto, he said the English Defence League is in fact anti-racist, anti-Nazi, and they are naive fools.
And on 1242, and on page 1242, he says he has come and met with and influenced and shared ideologies.
Don't you think the security services would have known? The problem I have is if 38 Muslim girls had been raped in the last few weeks,
it's got nothing to do with
the country would be on fire. The country would be on fire.
The
country would be on fire.
Wait a minute.
The country would be on fire. These are our daughters.
I'd like to ask you a question.
And our daughters as well.
Everybody's daughters. Shaista.
Our daughters are not being raped.
Tommy,
excuse me.
Tommy, you're making more noise than the lot outside.
Okay, I'm from Oxford.
Shaista.
I'm from
I'm
Oxford.
passionate about it.
And I'm from Oxford. There's an active case going on at the moment. Thames Valley Police are investigating grooming of young women. Okay,
young women,
a similar
11-year-old children.
Can I just speak,
our
please?
Daughters.
Can I speak, please?
Yeah,
Thank
sorry,
you.
all right, sorry.
Thank you very much. Now, in Rochdale, there's been a similar case. Now, some supporters of the EDL showed up at Liverpool Crown Court, where the case is currently, it's basically gone to court. Now, that trial had to be temporarily halted. My question to you is, does the EDL show up at court cases where white men have been grooming women?
No.
Because, frankly, but do you show up? Do you show up at those cases?
Let's take it over here to Charlie. Charlie, what do you want to say? And then John Mann in a minute.
Can I just say, I am totally anti-fascist, 100%. And I actually got arrested last year for throwing eggs at this lot. So I'm not against you guys, okay, as an organisation for advocating love for everyone. That's what I'm about. But there's an elephant in the room here, because unfortunately even the Asian community, and this isn't an Islamic issue, let's separate it.
No, but it is an Islamic issue.
But no, it isn't. It's a cultural issue that unfortunately in these situations, Pakistani young male or British-born Pakistani males are overrepresented in the grooming and exploitation of young girls. And I'm sorry, but unfortunately that has actually been shown statistically. But I know the Asian communities are working with those men to sort those issues out.
John Mann, MP. John Mann, MP. In a minute, John Mann.
And we shouldn't shy away from issues any more than we should shy away from problems with the Catholic Church and Catholic priests. So there are many problems. I mean, the EDL is a tiny little organisation, and I think they'd be far better off if it's Mr. Robinson, is it? If instead of sorting aggressive marches in areas that leads to confrontation, if he accepted the dinner invite, I think that would be a far better way of putting it.
Listen. They've got this extraordinary celebrity edition of Come Dine With Me coming up here.
Luton's this is the problem. Luton's Labour-run council.
Were you serious about the offer?
I've met with 3 imams. I've got another meeting next week with an imam. Luton's Labour-run council, who want to sort all these problems out, when we contacted and asked them to facilitate a meeting between myself and Luton's Islamic leaders, they said no.
Well, he said yes. Abha, what do you want to say?
I'm concerned we're actually engaging with the merits of the EDL's debate rather than the actual issue, which is, are we allowed to express ourselves? This is what it comes down to.
Well, he is expressing himself.
Well, in terms of what's happening at the moment, and I'm certainly a perception that I'm getting, as a result of 30, 40 years of multicultural thinking, it's now prohibited to even challenge certain basic things. And I don't agree with the way the debate's going. The general debate, not the debate here.
Clear what is lawful and what is unlawful. Under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, under Section 1(1), if you incite hatred, or you give harassing, or you incite terror into a proportion of the population, under Section 127 of the Communications Act, under the Public Order Act, the law makes it very, very clear and distinct what is lawful and what is unlawful. And all we're talking about is what is unlawful.
Are you not suggesting, by saying that we're being complacent, that the EDL is an organisation that should be banned? Is that not what you're suggesting?
I think.
So what do you think is complacency?
You did have a Facebook petition, and of course, if they were banned or any organisation banned, so there was an e-petition.
Right.
That causes its own problems, doesn't it?
After Breivik killed virtually 100 people in
Monster. He was a
Utoya,
monster.
absolute
Yeah,
monster,
absolute monster.
who loved the EDL.
No, he didn't
was
love
a
the
big
EDL.
fan
He
of the
called us
EDL.
naive fools.
He shared.
Let's get away from that point. We're not going to get anywhere on that. Carry on.
My point was he shared an ideology, and I thought if the government has decided that they will ban organisations who share an ideology with extremist organisations and extremist groups, the EDL have planted both feet over that line.
Is it right? Okay, is it right? This is the thing. Some people would be able to hear the shouting outside where we are today. Is that are there some people actually on the left who are doing this who are entirely counterproductive? The far left?
There are militant anti-fascists who contribute.
Hold on.
Wait. I'm not a member of any Facebook group.
On your Facebook profile, you say your political views are left, far left, or further left.
What? No, I don't. I say I'm a progressive.
No,
okay,
left, far left.
Anyway, the point is, there are militant anti-fascists that in some towns and cities contribute to some of the problems, and that is an elephant in the room that is often not discussed. Should the English Defence League be banned at present? No. I think the grievances that it's campaigning on and its supporters should be heard. But at some point, the organisation has to start taking some responsibility just for some misreporting, as do sections of the British tabloid media. To give you an example,
yeah, go on.
This month, tabloid media reported that 2/3 of young British men endorse honour killings. The actual figure was 6%.
They had to apologise, didn't they?
Yeah, but yet the tabloid media will jump on this and say, well, look at this. Muslims are incompatible with British society. Actually, if we look beyond that and look at the actual data, it's completely a different story.
This European-wide movement, this counter-jihadism, as it is called, where's the money coming from? Where's the funding coming from?
We've got no money, we've got no funding.
Across Europe?
Across Europe. I mean, if you look at, say, states like the Netherlands, Geert Wilders is privately backed, but mainly by funders in the United States.
United States, who are they?
Others are political parties. Well, I mean, individuals that are linked to fundamentalist, radical ideologies, but others are political parties that are democratically registered. If the English Defence League goes into elections, then obviously we'll have to comply with electoral law.
Yes, sir, you've had your hand up for ages. Let's get a microphone down. Are you going to dinner as well?
Sorry, no, I would sincerely like to discuss two areas with you. Jihad, I've got to say it's jihad, that's a struggle, and that is you. I want to sit down with you and let you know how much I contribute to Britishness and being Muslim in my society. Let me finish. And contribute to my society as a Muslim, because my religion asks me to do that and teaches me to do that. So please, take up my offer, let's sit down, have a coffee and have a chat.
Whenever you want, mate, whenever you want.
There, on this debate, we'll leave it. Thank you all very much indeed for partaking in that debate. If you'd like to have your